Innocence, promises, me and you. Nero basically said, yeah, cool, let's put pop vocals on top of dubstep, make it super melodic and emotional. And it worked ridiculously well. Let's get it.
Can you take me
And I'll be breaking down all the individual elements, the drums, the bass, the vocals to get to that end result. Starting from... Yeah, let's get into it. So if we're in 2010, we need a BPM of 140. Why did I pick 144? We want a beefy kick and snare. So it's not just going to be a simplified pattern of 2010, we spiced it up a little bit, give some variation and whatnot. I will admit one kick pattern that got absolutely rinsed during that time was the boom, boom, boom. So definitely use that. Nero used it a bunch of times as well. That is all to be said with that. Beefy kick, beefy snare. And for the snare, we're going to layer in some noise on top of that. One of those white noise down sweeps that kind of laid it over the top of the snare, use the fade tool to kind of shape it. Just gives so much more impact for that snare. Layer in with some reverb and a little bit of distortion too. Listening back to some Nero reference tracks, there weren't too many cymbals thrown about. Very simple. And a random little snare did it, but hey, it worked. And then once you have the drums all together, it's time for the processing. A little touch of OTT, some reverb, and some multi-band dynamics. I was listening back to Nero's drums and they sounded very compressed and squeezed, but not in an OTT kind of way. So I really just hammered in the threshold, make sure the highs, the mids, the lows are all just kind of pushed down. Because before, very dynamic, but now it's being squeezed. Moving on to the vocals, because hey, it's a Nero track. So I took this vocal phrase from one of my own sample packs.
Can you take me higher? Can you take me down?
And I thought, cool, this has got some empty moments. I can duplicate some of the sections of the vocals to get that classic old school dubstep repetition sound. So that phrase transformed into this with a bunch of repetitions.
Can you take me higher, higher, higher? Take me down, down, down. Can you take me higher?
I definitely feel like part of that old school dubstep sound is the repetition on every beat of a certain phrase. So
down, down.
So with those chops in place, time for the processing effects. And there is quite a few of them to get them blended into this mix. Doubler.
Can you take me?
Just give that extra stereo width. Obviously a little bit of OTT as well. Okay, maybe a lot of OTT. A little bit of saturation.
Can you take me high?
That vocal's getting absolutely squished and slammed before we feed it into the reverb.
Can you take me higher?
A little bit of chorus. The EQ cut, we don't need any bass because we're going to introduce a lot of bass soon. And then just classic side chain from the kick and snare. And a few more effects added to the repetition part. So we'll turn this on. Make it really immense with lots of delay and lots of reverb. So all this together.
Can you take me higher? Take me down, down, down. Can you take me higher?
Anyways, once we've got the vocal sorted, it's now onto the bass. And so what was everybody using in 2010? Good old Massive. Just use a couple of the basic wavetables here. With a little magic fifth chucked into place, aka 7 semitones. A little bit of detune on that. Nothing too crazy if I'm honest. Bit of movement on the band reject filter. So you get sounding from that too. Phaser, dimension expansion. Very basic sounding patch, but very Nero and very effective. As for the bass progression, standard root note. Then we're gonna dive into some high notes, but to get to the original high note, a little pitch riser up to it. We're not just starting on this note, we're rising up into it. Sub bass, very basic, mostly a sine wave, and that's pretty much it in Massive. And then my trusty little overdrive trick to give the sub bass just a little bit more harmonics. Little synth layer on top of this just to give it a bit more spice and a bit more epicness. No crazy envelopes or LFOs on this one, it's just basic wavetables at different positions. Classic phaser as well from Massive. And then a little harmony on the second. And then with all the three bass elements together, it's sounding chunky and that epic mid-range, which Nero is definitely famous for. The mid-range bass. And for the classic main bass processing, this little overdrive took it from like okay-ish to oh yeah. It was just missing that grit and that energy, and this it kind of gave it that guitar tonal texture. Very glad I stumbled across that, and leaving some sub bass room and some lead room in this little EQ cut. And then we have our main layer too. All of them rammed into a group with OTT, saturator, and then sidechain. Yeah, this weird EQ shape, but that's too clinical. This is characterful 2010. Here's the harmony. And you'll notice something which I haven't talked about yet, and is this utility. And that's to get the classic Nero sound, the sidechain pump, volume automation going on here. It's just the Nero icing on the cake. If you were to take away anything from this video, it's that volume automation doing the random. I did it all manually, created my own little points, which kind of sounds like sidechain, but just, yeah, volume automation sidechain of sorts. And we've arrived at the final drop and this little additional extra vocal phrase echo thing to kind of just reinforce that 2010 sound. It's honestly all it is. EQ, reverb, pan, sidechain. And if you followed along and did all those steps, it just sounded a little something like this.
Can you take me